again, I want to be very clear as we go into this next section, the final section of The Tempest, the final thing I kind of want to talk about in the course. As we head into this, I want to be clear. It's going to sound like I claimed Prospero was a nice guy, but now I'm revealing he's really a bad guy. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just want you to somehow, it's not that Prospero appears to be a nice guy, but is actually a bad guy. The issue is more complicated. It's that some people may see Prospero and think he's a really nice, good guy. Other people might see Prospero and notice a totally different set of things about him, so that somehow he is both a nice guy and a bad guy at the same time. And that's really what Shakespeare does. Is if you meet people in movies, characters will be super good or super evil. But in real life, people are usually more complicated than that. They're like a mix of good and evil. And it can be hard to judge them because sometimes you're like, oh boy, this guy did this really bad thing, but then usually he's really nice. And what kind of person is he? It's hard to judge human beings. Shakespeare's characters are so realistic that they're like real people. One of the things that makes Shakespeare's character like real people is that I have no idea if some of them are good or bad. They're just such a complex mix of good and bad things that I don't quite know what to do with them. So let's start talking. We've talked about all the good things about Prospero. Now I want to talk about the bad stuff. And then I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you ultimately think about this old man on this island with his daughter. So let's start with the most obvious thing that is the most troubling, one of the most troubling things in any kind of Shakespeare play. It's very difficult. Um, we like Prospero. He's taking care of his daughter and he's got his enemies. He seems like he got treated really badly. His brother took over his thing. Um, and he's been mistreated, so we feel bad for him. And then he decides to forgive his enemies. That makes us like him. He gives up magic because he decides magic has actually been bad for him. It's been kind of an addiction. Um, so there's a lot to like about Prospero, but there's a lot of bad things about Prospero too. And one of them is real obvious right from the start: Caliban. There is another creature on the island. Oh, my headphones are low here. There's another creature on the island, and the creature's name is Caliban. Caliban is some kind of magical creature. We don't really quite know what. In the movie, he's played by a black actor, which is interesting. I really like that choice. He's actually been in some of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's in some Marvel shit. He's a pretty cool guy. His name's Demon Hansu. He in the movie, Caliban has like a rock. He's like kind of he's a black guy, but he's not like a person. He has like a rock monster kind of face. He doesn't have a lot. You could imagine like a total rock monster, but he's just got some rocks on his face. He's like half rock monster. There's been versions where he's sort of like a mutant fish. I've seen versions where he's like a caveman, or where he's like some kind of hairy monster, like a Bigfoot kind of character. Um, so Caliban he lives on the island. Um, we say that Prospero and his daughter have been stranded, are the only human beings on the island, but there are, of course, two other creatures: Ariel, who is Prospero's servant, and Caliban, who is Prospero's servant. And the really scary thing you get into when you look at these two creatures is that we call them servants, which is a nice way of saying it, but really, Ariel and they're magical creatures, they're not human, so it makes it slightly more complicated. But Ariel and Caliban, they're slaves. There's not here, and I don't. That's not my word. That's the word they use in the play. He has magical creatures that help him, but I think he's forcing them to help him. And if that's the case, then Prospero is a really complicated dude because he essentially gets all his shit done through slave labor, which is fucked up. Um, so let's take a look at Caliban in the play and the kind of slave labor angle with Caliban. Um, so I'm on page 3. And again, we're kind of starting over from the beginning, looking at a different aspect of here. Prospero says, to have no screen between this party play, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is the whole story about his brother doing terrible things to him. Oh, boy, I don't even think I need this. Sorry, I got a little bit lost here. But they remember... he tells the whole story about how they got kicked out of Italy, and so he's sent to the island with his daughter. He tells her the whole story. I'm sorry, I've gotten a little bit lost where I'm going here. He talks about how his enemies have all washed up on shore, and his enemies are here, and now he can control them, and he makes them go to sleep. Okay, and then he gets Ariel to come back, and he says he tells Ariel what to do, and he gives Ariel a job. Um, and he says, "Hast thou, spirit, performed to point the tempest that I bade thee?" Right? Did you make the tempest as a big storm? That's the storm at the beginning. He says, "Did you make that big storm?" And Ariel says to every article, um, I mean, I did everything you asked. He says, I boarded the king's ship, now on the beak and the waist and the deck and every cabin I flamed amazement. So he made all kinds of crazy things happen on the ship with flames. Sometimes I divided and burned in many places, because Ariel was like living fire. On the topmast, the yards, the bowsprits, I would flame distinctly. So Ariel is reporting back to Prospero. Prospero's like, did you do everything I told you to do? And Ariel says that he did. And he sort of reports back that this is exactly what Prospero asked him to do, and he gives the whole description of sort of all of the crazy stuff. Everybody went crazy and lost their minds. Hell is empty, and all the devils are here. Right? People just the people on the ship lost their minds because they thought it was like demons and shit. Um, and he checks up on them, and Ariel says, everyone's alive, and actually the ship only looked like it was shipwrecked. Actually, the ship is fine. Prosper Ariel has hidden it in some part of the island. And so he describes everything that happened with all of the ship and all of the stuff. But then Ariel starts to kind of get annoyed at Prospero. He says, "Is there more toil? Like, are you giving me more work to do? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee what thou hast promised, which is not yet performed." And Prospero's like mad, like moody, like you're in a bad mood. Shut the fuck up. What is it thou can demand? Like, you don't get to demand things from me. I can't believe you're being moody. Do what I tell you to do. But Ariel says, listen, I need you to remember what you promised me, because you haven't done it yet. And he says, what is it that you want? He says, my liberty. Ariel wants freedom. Prospero's got Ariel under control. He's using some kind of magic spell to keep Ariel controlled. So Ariel's doing all this shit for him, but Ariel doesn't seem like he has a lot of choice. And Prospero has promised Ariel that once he performs all the things Prospero needs with his enemies and all this shit, then he's going to let him go. But Ariel's kind of eager to go. He would like to be released from whatever magical slavery he is under. He's annoying Prospero by asking about it so much, because Prospero says, before the time be out, like, you want free, like, you have to work for me for a certain amount of time. You want to get freedom early? No more. He says, I prithee, remember I have done thee many a worthy service. I told no lies, made no mistaking, served without grudge or grumblings. Thou didst promise to bate me a full year. Right? You said after the end of a year you would let me go. And Prospero says, dost thou forget from what torment I freed thee? No, thou dost, and I think it's too much to tread the ooze of the salt deep, to run upon the sharp wind of the north, to do me business in the veins of the earth when it's based with frost. It's like, are you complaining about doing errands for me? Like, do you remember what I did for you? Now, we, the audience, we don't know what he's talking about yet, but he's about to kind of summarize it for us. But basically, the issue is that Ariel was trapped in a tree when Prospero crash landed on the island. Prospero released him from the tree, which sounds really nice. But when he released him from the tree, Prospero said, okay, since I released you, you have to work for me for a year and do everything I say, and then I'll let you go. And of course, Ariel's options were stuck in a tree forever or be Prospero's slave for a year. And so, of course, Ariel picked be Prospero's slave for a year. But you can already get the sense that and he's going to summarize this, and I'm going to go through it. I want you to see the actual words on the page. But that's the basic thing that Ariel is saying, is that Prospero's like, you want to be free? I guess you forgot that time that I let you out of the tree you were trapped in. And so this really begins a whole discussion about sort of slavery in the play, which is very complicated. All right, we'll pick it up in the next video.